That's resisting, right? We all know how to do that. We've all, hopefully, gone down to the Capitol at one point and marched around and chanted for hours. That's what we did a lot at Andre Noy. We had unofficial field trips days when we would go down to the Capitol and we would chant and sing until the legislators got so mad at us that they would come outside. It was beautiful. We still do it today. It's great. But I think as a people, it's very much ingrained in us that to survive, we need to learn how to resist. And as artists, somehow people find some kind of power in someone standing on a stage and spitting metaphors at them that it makes them want to do something. So if that's what it takes, then artists will continue to write poems like that. Grandfather is calling me. Okay, so this next poem I wrote, my mother, like I said, is from Detroit. She grew up there in the 60s. And if you guys don't know anything about Detroit, it's not right now, I mean, they're kind of just underwater in the worst way possible, which is really unfortunate. But if you want to look at a place that has a lot of racial turmoil, Detroit is a great place to look to. So I'm just going to do this poem, but the poem speaks to this idea of redlining, which I didn't learn about until, I guess, last year, or maybe the year before in a class. And the idea of redlining is an institutionalized brand of racism in which banks would not offer loans to people of color to buy houses in certain neighborhoods. And this is why we have ghettos. This is why there are certain cities, or certain neighborhoods and cities that are clearly different than others. And it's sort of funded this wave of allowing this kind of white suburbia to exist with the kind of brown and black ghetto on the outskirts. And if you look closely enough, this has everything to do with our widening achievement gap, our widening income gap today. And I think it's really important to kind of acknowledge that this institutionalized brand of racism, obviously not the only way that we discriminate against people of other races, but has it's intrinsically linked to the fact that there are less people of color in university classrooms. And that's what was big for me. I took a class, an ethnic studies class, and I was often offended by the professor, probably once a day, by something she would say. And that's where this poem came about from. And I'm going to stop talking about it, I'm just going to do it. And if you don't understand it, then that's my fault. But whatever. My mother grew up in Detroit in the My mother grew up white in Detroit, 12 Mile. In the 1960s, where young children, privileged enough to be born on a certain side of the line, played Red Rover and picket fences, just a pebble's throw from 8 Mile Road. America's most defining city, suburb line, where institutionalized racism learned to procreate in a time where an integrated neighborhood was deemed unstable. Redlining was used as a restrictive covenant that determined where people of color could live and buy homes. City officials drew the maps and watched the city sink into soil. And in these streets, the red lines still run deep. Like the feet of diasporic people flee, and in 2010, the city seems to be burning from the inside out. Realtors using our skin as charcoal. The blacker, the faster they burn, the happier the customer, who are not afraid to say, we want no color here. But it ain't just Detroit. It's Philadelphia, the 5 boroughs, how our communities turned ghettos began to burn. Best believe it's the dirty South, Los Angeles. It's not like we didn't already know that racism had plagued every inch of American soil. At Stanford, we learn these facts at a distance. In our suburban cul-de-sac bubble, we pretend that diversity in our classrooms means that we have come far from our past, and that far is enough. We throw the word post-race around as if racism is something we have beaten when as if racism is something we have beaten when we know. Those of us born on a certain side of the line remember the taste of race enough to identify what it is and what it isn't. It's my ethnic studies teacher saying that we don't grow up understanding that people of color are underrepresented in university classrooms. It's my white classmates agreeing with the statement. It's the brown bodies in the room that don't even need to open our eyes to see it. It is the language, how it doesn't fit right on our tongues. It's the history books' accents. It's the process we go through to teach ourselves that this is wrong, never learning how to fix it. That would be too dangerous. It only darken the lines between us, as if sitting in this filth doesn't. We play discussions with history as if we didn't even learn the lessons. And we have read of the lynching Whether erased from Texas textbooks or not, we will remember how black bodies hung in the deep south, white men fronting whiter capes playing God, making angels of young boys. We watched as their halos fell below the jawline, only gasping at the cracking noise of bone to skin to rope, how something other than weight hung in the air those days. It is heat. It is hate. It is screaming our names. So what happens when in Arizona, black, queer, Chicano, and any literature other than white is banished from the classroom to the furnace? How fast are we burning now when you add the books, when all you can read are white pages? When will there be enough room for our black and brown bodies in this institution? There is enough white between the lines without having to banish the words. Can you see the smoke rising? The ink hanging? Can you breathe through the hypocrisy or slice it? Can you taste it? How in the last 2 years, unemployment rose from 6 million to 17, while wealth held by millionaires in the United States rose by 18%. It is 2011. Some red lines have only thickened since the 60s. The government is playing maintenance while we are burning in the aftermath. Our homes are ground zero. No one comes to visit. No one sees anything but dirt. Just beyond 8 Mile Road, there is a town where young children, privileged enough to be born on a certain side of the line, play Red Rover and picket fences. We can see them from where we hang. It is almost as if we can touch them in the darkness.